Hey, ladies and gents, welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry. Episode 139. As always, I'm joined by Dom.
I'm trying to praise the sun, but it's just real damn dark these days.
And Jordan.
Eating good in the neighborhood.
Okay, I do not endorse that shit around here, but whatever.
So instead of our usual what we've been playing, I think the beginning of our podcast for Hop in the News, we're going to focus on Sekiro and talking about our initial impressions on it. From what we've talked about before the podcast, I've played it the most, so I probably want to go last. I guess, Dom, you've played it the least out of all of us, so you can go ahead and give us your initial impressions.
So, as someone who's played all of the Dark Souls games, excluding Demon Souls, thus Dark Souls games, and Bloodborne, did play Bloodborne, that was a good one. Sekiro is just so fundamentally different in regards to gameplay that I'm very, very, not far in, but it's just beating the hell out of me. And it feels weird not knowing how to fight enemies in a FromSoft game, because it's something I had gotten so good at. I could nearly play Dark Souls 1 with my eyes closed. I just know the rhythm and how to fight. It's so ingrained in me that going into this, it's so difficult. It's so hard, and I can't figure it out yet. I will not stop trying, though.
The difference between Souls and Bloodborne is a speed change, whereas this feels almost like a format change in the way you're approaching combat. So it's not as easy, probably, to jump between the two.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Because even Dark Souls to Bloodborne, it's not as big of a jump. They incentivize you to be more aggressive just through being able to gain health back by hitting quicker after you get hit. And then you get your stamina regens quicker in Bloodborne. But in Dark Souls, a lot of people play that game without a shield, or with one of the small shields that's only good for parrying anyway. So, I mean, you can really play Dark Souls just the same way as you played Bloodborne. I mean, your character just is a little slower, but you could use that same style. But Sekiro is just, holy crap, it's just different, the gameplay. But outside of that, because I've not played too much, I mean, it's super good looking, which is, I guess, to be expected. I mean, this is another... Dark Souls 3 was their first... No, Bloodborne was also this gen. I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, the game looks great. It's only 18 gigabytes, so sorry, Rockstar, Activision, everybody else, Bethesda, who can't figure out a way to keep their games under 100 gigabytes. But 18 gigabytes, guys, just saying, I can keep more than one of these fuckers on my hard drive at a time. Anyway.
Okay, well, maybe that's
apples to oranges.
Anger that should be directed at Sony and not Red Dead, who's making gorgeous 4K games, because I will say, From's come a long way, but their games are still woefully under the bar, I would say, that is set by other AAA games. These are more than AA, but less than AAA. So
I disagree with Sekiro. I think Sekiro is one of the most beautiful games this gen.
It's beautiful, but dude, good. The character models are still like the way that they're moving, acting, moving their lips, whatever audio track you're using, there's just they're behind. Now the environments are great, but there's just a difference there. It's not the same as a AAA game to me. They don't put as much into the UI, all that. So.
But they put more effort into the combat, which is a lot better than most games. So I think their focus is elsewhere.
Which is a lot of AA, single A games will do that, where it's hey, we're not gonna give you the best looking cutscenes, but we're gonna be able to give you the most fun or engaging gameplay. So.
These cutscenes are beautiful though in this game. I agree with the player models during the actual gameplay, but the cutscenes are gorgeous.
No, I think the models look better in the gameplay. I think the models look bad in the cutscenes.
I completely disagree.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it looks good, but I'm just glad it's 18 gigabytes. It's unheard of. I don't know.
By the way, Jared, are you playing Japanese audio track?
No, so I was actually debating with that, and my reasoning, I went English. Well, I guess I'm not doing I am doing subtitles, but not because I can't understand what they're saying, obviously. My first playthrough, I just want to wholly focus on the story and not have to worry about that stuff so much. But when I play through it my second time, which I will do for sure, I am going to get the more authentic. And I love that by default it is a Japanese audio. That's awesome. I love that that's set as audio.
But also interesting is the fact that we're both on English. Since you said that about the cutscenes, suspected you'd be on Japanese because I can't believe how bad the lip syncing is in English. Which I understand that the default is Japanese, but that's what I'm saying when I'm talking about like kind of production value, I guess, is that other games a lot, kind of what you would expect to be published by Activision. It's like, well, we have a global release and we're going to make sure that the lips sync up no matter what language you're using.
Yeah, I guess I don't consider lip sync in terms, like, 'cause I was talking about how beautiful it looks graphically, So lip sync wouldn't be in that conversation for me in terms of how pretty the cutscenes look.
Yeah, it gets really distracting for me, but generally, yeah, the environments are pretty. And Dom, sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
No, I'll piggyback.
I mean, we're all talking about Sekiro today,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
So that's the other weird thing about this game, because there's you can still feel it's a FromSoft game.
Right.
The way the subtitles are written and the way that, like, the tone that people talk in and different things like that, and it just has a feel. But it is weird having one of those games and all of a sudden the cutscenes have all this dialogue and you can go talk to NPCs and the way they talk is just they're actually speaking to you in meaningful, coherent sentences. It's a weird fucking thing.
The interesting thing too, I don't think either of you have gotten to this part, and I wouldn't consider this a spoiler because I'm not going to be very specific on it. But to your point of, like, there's a lot more narrative in this game actually described to you than other From games.
Yeah, exactly.
There's these parts you can find throughout the game that are like red glowing areas, and when you walk up, it shows a past memory of characters. So there's also other, outside of just NPCs that you talk to, there's these like specific areas with the young prince that you're protecting that give you backstory as well that are really cool when you find them as well. And I don't think either of you have reached that because we talked about before the show where you guys have gotten in the game, and I think the first one you run into is a little bit past the area where both of you guys got to, that second mini boss technically.
Yeah, I have not gotten there yet, but that it is just a little jarring, to have all this narrative kind of like, explicitly explained. It's just weird, and to be a part of like the story, like as it's happening too, more so.
Yeah.
Like, I won't say what happens, but like you're in the beginning, there's events, that take place, and you're right in the middle of them.
You can talk about the beginning of the game. You can talk about the beginning of the game.
There's events that take place at the beginning of the game. Wink, wink.
It's just weird that you're in them, and it's happening. Like you fight that initial guy, who, spoiler, cuts your hand off. Obviously you lose a hand at some point, right? But yeah, and then the little prince gets kidnapped from you, and so like that's the premise of the game. But you're actually there when it happens, and you're a part of it, and you're in the fight, and like, I don't know, that kind of stuff doesn't really happen in Dark Souls games. It's kind of just you're doing your own story and making things happen yourself. It's just different.
A lot of it in Souls and Bloodborne is environmental storytelling, and also a lot of the narrative and context is told through item descriptions, right?
Yeah,
or like vague NPC dialogue, where this is giving you a clearly defined story, which it's jarring, but I do think a lot of that probably has to do with their partnership with Activision, and not in a bad way either. I enjoy it. It's a different take for a Souls game.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's about all I got. I've not played very much at all, so I mean, I just got to get better at the combat. I got to sink some more time into it and get used to it, because it is just a different thing than any of the other Souls games. So
yeah.
Dom, since you were mentioning kind of the story and the cutscenes, I feel like I should give a shout out to the opening cinematic, which once again, so glad that I'm not necessarily media blackout, but I just really don't watch trailers for much of anything anymore. And of course, this was already out there. I'm so glad that I didn't see it, because it is gorgeous, and it does introduce you to the story of this orphaned boy, or the wolf as you are, and just this gigantic hulking figure that kind of adopts you and trains you. That was obviously way higher production value than anything I was used to from. Well, I guess they've had opening cutscenes for
not to this level though.
Games,
it's their best, I think.
Yeah, I would say that. I would say that. Like Bloodborne, the hunter walking through the town and stuff, like that looks cool, but this is like this really did look fucking gorgeous, and it jumping into the cutscenes, I wasn't like, oh man, but it was like, what it was is like loving, especially from Japanese games. I just love, and I'm so glad I didn't watch it for this, and I'm glad I didn't watch it for Kingdom Hearts before they came out. But just like settling into the game and being introduced to the game through this opening cinematic that has this higher production value, kind of like they do with their anime intros in Japan, where they'll put a lot of budget into that opening cinematic. So I really appreciated that.
Even when you after you save the prince and you walk out of the tunnel right after that beginning area, and there's the field in front of you, so beautiful. Oh man, it's so gorgeous. Yeah.
It really is a pretty game. Like I said during the gameplay, I think it's very pretty. I will say the actual like watching the movement of the wolf, the character Sekido, I think is really rough for me. Which I guess kind of like links to the gameplay, because of the two, I would say this is closer to Bloodborne than the Souls series.
Yeah.
And gameplay-wise, combat-wise. And, man, moving this character around versus moving the hunter around in Bloodborne is a world of difference. I think it feels so fluid and nice with the dash button and the... just kind of the trot that you have to kind of get around your enemies even when you're not actually like sprinting in Bloodborne. I really like the strafe in Bloodborne, and the character movement in this game is not nearly up to par when you compare it to Bloodborne. I think like
I didn't notice that.
Remind me. Oh gosh, dude, he keeps like when he runs around, it's like, or not runs around, but like kind of jogs like mid-speed. He's kind of doing this like hunched over thing, and it reminds me of when I was making fun of Spider-Man PS4, where it literally looks like he's holding a shit in his jeans, like he just crapped his pants and he's trying, like, doesn't want it to fall out. And so it's like this half hunched over like kind of jog thing, and it's just, to me, it feels very clunky. And like when I'm trying to get around these hulking figures or these tough samurai ninja whatever things that I'm facing, it hasn't felt very fluid to me. But I do like the combat. I think I can appreciate the fact that the speed has been set closer to Bloodborne than Souls. That's probably what links them closest. And I haven't gotten into other weapons, but the sword, I will say that's a big difference. I hate to compare this to Bloodborne so closely, but I mean, same company, and like I said, like this is their closest contemporary. So like the fact that you have the fewer weapons in Bloodborne, but that they have so many different kind of permutations and ways that you can use them and attack with them, and like you literally can switch the weapon into like two different modes basically. I feel like so far, because of the fact that the combat is so heavily focusing on not just attacking but also parrying, blocking with your weapon, and kind of holding your ground and your posture, as it were, I feel like the attacking half has been super simplified, and that's to kind of like balance out the fact that it's more just supposed to be a balanced combat system where it is like half attack, half defense, whereas Bloodborne is all about being aggressive and kind of pushing your limits and seeing how much you can get away with, like with as little defense as possible, almost being almost like a scrappy fighter that doesn't get touched, as opposed to trying to just stay alive. So that part is kind of jarring for me, I guess, where Jared, you were kind of touching on this before the show, like it really is about kind of, if you want the game to click, if you want to be able to enjoy the game properly, you really have to learn how to master, or at least understand, the kind of defense and blocking parry system, right?
Yeah, and I guess I wouldn't say that the game is necessarily balanced between offense and defense, because from what I've played, it's about you being aggressive, But the difference is, from what I haven't played Bloodborne, but I've watched quite a bit of it, is that in Bloodborne it seems like it's all about aggression and when you're in danger, evading, right? You don't really ever block in Bloodborne. That's not the point. It's attacking and evading, right? Dodging.
Right.
This is...
Also, I should mention, I was kind of talking about the controls specifically. I didn't ever say that out loud, but that's like where my mind was at.
Okay.
Like, you just have attack and defend, kind of, in this game. I mean, you have more than that, but you have, like, ninja stars that you can throw or whatever. But when it comes to your weapon in this game, there's an attack button and there's a defend button or parry, hold up your sword button. Whereas Bloodborne, you have like I was saying, you have like light attack, heavy attack. Then you can switch. You can press the button to switch your weapon mid attack so that it does a whole different. Like there's so many different permutations in Bloodborne that you have like 5 different options. Whereas here it's just attack button.
Yeah. Obviously, you guys are still early on, and there's some systems you guys haven't even unlocked yet. So I'll speak to this from somebody who's unlocked a lot of these things because I think some of that will change as you go farther in the game, Jordan. So you only have the sword in the game, right? That's your only main weapon. The thing that changes and the thing that you are forced to experiment with is your prosthetic arm. And I have 4 different tools. I don't want to necessarily say them because, like I said, I don't want to spoil it for you guys. But I have 4 different tools, and I'm constantly forced to change between them and experiment with enemies and try out the new prosthetic arms. So there's a lot of variation there in terms of the gameplay. And also, you unlock a skill tree where you buy skills, right? And there's special moves that you unlock in there. There's certain types of counters you unlock. There's certain types of moves you use that use both LB and RB to use them. You press them both at the same time to activate the move. They're called like samurai skills or something like that. So there are special moves and there are different permutations in the combat. And I have found a lot of differentiation there based on...
But when it comes to actually swinging your sword, there is simply attack button, correct? There's no light attack, heavy attack.
Well, yes, with that there's no heavy attack and light attack, but there are varying different attacks you can do with your sword. So you're attacking a special move.
You can do like power-up moves or whatever, but I'm saying as far as your basic attacks, that you don't need anything extra to do.
There's only one attack, yes.
Right, yeah, so that's the simplicity that I was getting at when it comes to more basic attack and defense, and then you're adding these, the arm, the prosthetic arm, and then, like you mentioned, a couple extra power-ups here and there. So that is why I say that it's so much like they really do want you to focus on being able to parry and defend yourself properly. That's why they have the posture stance instead of having stamina or the regain bar like in Bloodborne. So it and this is From Software finally making their Ancient Samurai game, so that's it's old school sword fighting tactics. But I will say, so far, a game that I have spent plenty of hours playing, I like the implementation of Neo more than Sekiro, because Neo you have like light attack, heavy. Neo like really is Samurai Bloodborne, where this is not. This is like different, right?
Yeah.
So you have like the light attack, heavy attack, the different weapon permutations like I was talking about, and then you have on top of that, which I really like, you have 3 different stances, which I won't go into the details of what they all do, but obviously you could tell that like, oh, that would give me different options as far as more defensive, more offensive, more there's multiple different things to choose from. So I kind of like like I said, implementation of that so far, but I might enjoy the more, in the way I see it, more simplistic kind of nature, whereas Sekiro's kind of, it's like it's getting it down to brass tacks. Like it really wants it to be you and the opponent facing off as adversaries, taking each other down, and not just you like kind of running through enemies.
Yeah.
This game, more than any other From game I've played, is all about trying to isolate foes, right? Like you get a few foes at you coming like surrounding you, this game more than any other From game is like you're really about to be fucked if you aren't able to kind of take them down individually.
So to your point, like it is a rule in Souls and in Bloodborne 2 that you don't ever want to get surrounded by multiple enemies, but you can make do, right? Like it's more difficult, but you can make do. This game is probably the hardest in terms of facing multiple enemies at once.
Because of the posture stuff.
Exactly. It's very difficult. The thing I will say to this game is that it does give you a real sense of accomplishment, or at least for me, for stealth. It rewards you for stealth throughout the game.
Yeah, a lot more stealth.
And it makes areas easier. There's been plenty of times I've run into certain types of enemies, once again being vague for spoiler reasons, and they are hard as hell to face head on. But after respawn or exiting the area and dropping aggro and coming back, I came through and I snuck through and I stealth killed them, and it made it a lot easier. So it rewards you for taking the time to go stealth, and a lot of the enemies are set up in a way that you can stealth them. Obviously it's a From game, so they're going to set up traps, or the lack of ability to be able to take out two enemies that are next to each other, because the moment you stealth kill one, the other one will get notified and understand that you're right there. But it does reward stealth in a really meaningful way, which is great. Another thing with From games that I've loved, obviously I can't speak to it with Bloodborne, but I'm pretty sure it does the same thing. Souls games have really cool, interesting NPCs. You have the Onion Knight in the Souls series. You have the other knights in Dark Souls 3. I forget their names. The one, you know which ones I'm talking about, Dom? The three knights that you find in that little like circle before you go to... I can't remember their names off the top of my head. Anyways, the Souls games are known for really interesting NPCs, and I will say Bloodborne as well. There's some really cool characters in this game. Strong anime vibes, Jordan, from some of these characters that remind me of some people from Death Note, or even Hunter x Hunter, which I'm currently watching.
The dude that you meet at the beginning that like is just a kind of like a animating zombie that allows you to train.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? That's super anime. I was like, oh my gosh, like the way his face looks and all that.
It's one of the coolest implementations of that. It makes sense contextually in the world, right? That there's this guy who's undying. He's like, hey, if you need a...
Undying. That's what I was trying to say.
If you need to try to work on stuff, I'm here to be your warm body, or whatever he says.
Yeah, warm body.
You guys haven't learned about the consequences for dying yet, right?
Yeah, you like lose... Dragon rot. Sucks.
Okay, I just wasn't sure. I didn't want to spoil anything. Yeah. There is ways to cure dragon rot. What I will say is they're very scarce. So if you know you're about to go into an area where you're going to die a lot, don't use the dragon rot heal before that, because you're just like, not making any progress.
If you're about to go face a hard boss, you don't want to clear everybody of dragon rot just before that, because you're going to die a lot and it's just going to give it to them again.
Exactly.
That's what I will say about that system, and kind of just these games have intricate and detailed systems. One of my biggest complaints with Neo was that they took what From did with those systems and kind of just went too far to where it's way too complex.
Yeah.
But like Bloodborne, you have systems similar to this. Usually the tradition is like you go out into the world, you die, you can come back before dying again. If you get to that spot, you can like resurrect like your old soul, almost, whatever you want to call it in the specific game, and you can get kind of like the points back, right? You can get your blood echoes or your souls back, right? In this game, you're dying twice, where you can, instead of trying to get back to that spot, you basically just restart right then. It's like, you want to give it another try right now? Go ahead. You can choose whether or not to. And then there's, on the back end, the whole like getting your stuff back that may have been lost is, you might have to help me with the name of this, Jared, but basically there's a percentage of how often you will get back your stuff when you die.
Oh, yeah, sometimes you keep it.
It's
dragon
called like...
rot.
Sorry, go ahead.
Decreases that percentage.
It's called like not Lucky Savior. It's something like that, and it's like you said, it's a percentage of the chance of you losing half of your stuff upon death. And the more dragon rot you get, the lower that percentage goes down. And if it's completely healed, it's maxed at I think 30%.
So I kind of had to get on the internet and like look that up. Like, wait, am I going to be able to cure this dragon rot? Okay, I can do that. It's a simple enough process to where you can do it throughout the game. Yada yada yada. But I felt like that seems like just really intricate systems kind of on the back end, like I said, that are, to me, I'm not necessarily sure if I'm thrilled with how complicated they seem off the bat because I couldn't understand them initially, which isn't unheard of for a From game, but we'll see how I settle into it.
That's like pretty par for the course. So like Dark Souls 1 it was really only one area, a few enemies that could curse you. And when you died after being cursed or whatever, your health bar is permanently halved.
Yep.
Process to heal that is a little bit tougher, but you could do it. And then Dark Souls 2...
I gotta say, in every one of their games, they have some arbitrary bullshit that it's like, hey, we're just gonna like bend you over for a couple hours and screw you for no reason whatsoever, and then we might let you have back that which you lost.
So yeah, it's definitely used as a way to like make you play a certain way, right? So like when you see those certain enemies that you know can curse you, you're gonna play differently. And the next example I was gonna give in Dark Souls 2, you actually every single time you die, part of your health bar is permanently notched off or whatever, all the way up until half or something like that. And that's like when they first explain that, it's just oof. But you get used to it pretty quick.
From is clearly the most masochistic of any developer I can think of. Like, you can just hear them laughing at you in the background, being like,
"It's a troll.
Now you got to do this, asshole. Fuck you." It's like, God damn it.
The thing I will
there
say,
are times where I just want to like give developers a good slap in the mouth for things that they
the thing with Dragon Rot though is it actually seems the least intensive in terms of its actual cause and effect on the world. From everything I've read, the only thing it really affects is NPC quest lines, which majority of people who play From games don't even do.
Not the first time through, at least.
Exactly, yeah.
Why do they have to take story away from you, though? It's like, jeez,
Well, it's likely not even taking story away, because I think all From quest lines are kind of convoluted in of themselves. Not difficulty-wise, but just like going to a certain area at a certain time in the game.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this guy is here now. It doesn't seem like it has any real strong ramifications on the end of the story, from what I've read. Obviously, I've avoided spoilers and all that. So I've touched on... I'm trying to think of the last thing I want to touch on. Oh, one of the coolest parts about From games is optional bosses. This game does a really good job about rewarding exploration and also punishing it. So obviously, you can find really cool items. You can find shinobi tools you could easily pass in the game. So that's one thing I'll say is make sure to explore the world, because there's missable things throughout shinobi tools that are very useful in certain fights. And there's 2 optional bosses or mini bosses I've found. One of them is like a complete F you shouldn't have came here boss. And the other one is, are you skilled enough to beat him? If that makes sense. Like, one is based situationally on you being too big-headed and trying to get in a fight you shouldn't have, and the other one is testing how good you are at the game yet.
Sounds like I won't know the difference when I get to them.
You will. Without spoiling, there's one that's very obvious, like, this is from bait. This is from software bait to do this. What I will say, too, so I faced 3 big bosses, 3 normal Souls From bosses, and they all feel completely different. Once again, avoiding spoilers, one of them is based on you using your grappling hook a lot, which is really cool. Another one is based on ground movement, and the other one just feels like what's the martial arts movie I'm thinking of? Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. If you're familiar with that movie and the movement of martial arts in that movie, there's a specific boss fight that's insane. The one thing I will say...
Sorry, I have a question for you since you're further ahead whenever you're done.
I was just going to go into one of the themes of the world in general that I really like, but if you have a question.
So far, obviously only a couple hours in or whatever, but so far I'm not seeing why they necessarily needed to strip away the kind of like action RPG side of the Souls games. And it does feel more simplistic to me. Obviously, it's still just as gritty, tough as nails type of thing, and it certainly has these systems for you to overcome and conquer. But why am I not changing agility stats and, you know, choosing like what areas to put points in when I level up type of thing? Is there do you see a reason why they would have not wanted that?
So in all the other Souls games, you don't play a specific character, right? You play whatever you create. And I'm not saying that's the specific reason, but that's my initial point. Is so obviously you're playing specifically as the wolf, and you do upgrade and change things. The skill thing that you guys, I don't think you guys have unlocked it yet, but there's varying branches in it, and the ones you have at the beginning when you first unlock it aren't the ones you can have for the rest of the game. That's part of like some of the hidden documents you can find that unlock parts of it, and they help unlock movement, stealth things to make you more stealthy, special moves like I was talking about before. The pearl beads, you guys have probably run into those. When you have 4 of those, that's how it upgrades your vitality and your stamina. And there's also the points you accrue to unlock the skill points as well. I just think the reason they did it is because they're focusing on this narrative with a specific character, and they want the focus of you upgrading to be specifically for his combat, not your own unique playstyle. Because unlike other games, obviously it's less so in Bloodborne, but in Souls you can use magic, or you can use like Dom was saying, aggressive style combat, or you can use sword and shield style combat. This is specifically telling the story of this shinobi, and I think they wanted to focus less on you making it customizable in terms of the overall play style, and more so on the specific combat. I think that's yeah. The thing I want to talk about too, and you guys will see more of this as the game goes along. Bless you. Is that the theme of a lot of the points of this world that they built, the theming of it, is that a lot of the important warriors in this world are based off of animals. They're named after animals, which is really cool. Obviously, Wolf is the main guy, right?
Shinobi.
There's other characters you meet and other bosses and even friendly NPCs that are all named and based off of animals.
Just to be clear, this is like historical fiction. It does take place in Japan.
Yes.
Right,
during the Sengoku era.
Right, and it is realistic to an extent with, you know, kind of like real life, I guess, you know, battles and just everything that goes with that. But
it's Game of Thrones, where it's like
there's
realistic, but there is elements of magic and, like, you know.
But I'm saying it does occur in our world.
I don't know.
Because I thought they were like referencing it like it's our world. That's what I'm saying. Like, Game of Thrones is fantasy. It's not actually historical fiction, even though obviously we know George R. R. Martin took from like War of the Roses and stuff. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Is it historical fiction, or is it fantasy that closely resembles history?
I think it's that, because nowhere in the 8 hours I've played do they ever mention Japan.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's like a made up. I think it's as close as it can be with it still not being real.
Right.
The father figure at the beginning that you were talking about, they say his name. I missed it the first time around, but he's called Owl, the big dude.
Okay.
Which is funny because if the animal you'd assume he associated with would not be an owl. But I just love the theming of it, that all of these characters are based off of animals, and there's some very interesting encounters with these types of people. So you're called the wolf a lot in the game, and you're never really called Sekiro, right? Because Sekiro, I think, is Japanese for lone wolf or something like that. One of the NPCs you meet gives you that name, and he talks to you, and the reasoning for him giving it to you is because of what he sees in you and stuff, which is really cool. I don't have much else to say. Obviously, when you guys get farther in the game, we can talk about specific bosses and encounters. There's an encounter in this game that I haven't experienced in any of the Souls games, and from what I've seen with Bloodborne, I don't think it takes place in it either. It's a certain thing that happens in the world. What I will say is, if you're somebody who has common fears that most people have, be prepared. I don't necessarily have a lot of common fears, so it didn't really bother me. But there's a portion of this game that, like, if you have some common fears, it's going to be terrifying.
Spiders, snakes, heights.
Those kind of things, yes, without being too specific. But yeah, loving my time. I can't wait for you guys to get farther because there's some specific boss encounters I want to talk about. You were talking about, Dom, without saying too much, that the character you said that people were saying gives a lot of people a tough time. I was stuck on him for like a good 45 minutes.
Beat my ass.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm really enjoying Sekiro. Can't wait to hear your guys' continued impressions. So far, I would say it's my personal game of the year, but I haven't really played much that competes with it. I haven't beaten Kingdom Hearts 3, so I don't have a full opinion on it yet, and I don't want to judge it too soon, but I don't know if it'll...
You played enough.
Yeah. You finished it, so... Yeah.
Real quick, I should just say... I played a tiny bit of Final Fantasy VII on my Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, of course you did.
You know what, Dom? I don't want to fucking hear it. But I just got it started and kind of saw how it went, and it was cool. You may remember that I had started the game on PS4 and got into it and was enjoying, and then got out of Midgar, which is kind of like once the game really starts to open up, and that's right when they announced coming to Switch in like spring of this year. So I decided to wait just because I do really, really want to play it on my Switch. And so far so good. I would say I got it for cheaper, I should also say, because of the Nintendo coins or whatever. But anyways, yeah, glad I did it, glad I waited. We'll see how it goes.
Awesome. I'm holding out for the remake. We talked about it before.
Oh, you're not going to play the original before the remake?
No, I'm waiting for them to announce a release date for the remake, and then I'm going to go ahead and
Gotcha.
Yeah. Because I just want to focus on it now, and then if the game doesn't come out for like 2 years or 3 years,
Right. Right.
So we're going to hop into some quick news. We have a lot of news that actually pertains to all of our interests, which is really cool. So first up, CD Projekt Red, there was some news out of them. Obviously, we've been waiting to hear about Cyberpunk for a while. And they stated that E3 2019 is going to be the most important in the company's history. There have been rumors that they're actually going to be showcasing 2 games. And the assumption there is that we're going to see a date for Cyberpunk 2077, whether that's a year or a date this year. I think we're all in agreement that we highly doubt that game comes out this year, right? Possibly, but highly unlikely, right, that Cyberpunk comes out in 2019.
Yeah.
And the thought is that they're going to show the date for that and then give a teaser for their next game, because they kind of did the same thing with Witcher 3 when they unveiled Cyberpunk. So people are assuming that that's going to be the case. Speaking of E3, Ubisoft announced their E3 conference. So it looks like still it's just PlayStation, and EA is going to be there, but they're not holding a conference either. But Ubisoft's taking the Monday slot at 1 p.m. Pacific time. Going to be interested to see what's happening there. Are we getting Splinter Cell? Are we getting Beyond Good and Evil timeline at the very least? For me, I'm interested to see if we see another Nintendo collaboration, because Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle was so successful. I could see a sequel to that, I don't know how quickly it would take to turn around a game like that. They already have a lot of the assets, so it's just about creating new experiences. I'd be really interested to see if we see anything new from that collaboration between the two. I don't know if you guys have anything to say about Ubisoft. We kind of assumed they were going to be there, right?
Yeah, and as far as anything to say about it, literally nothing. So
yeah.
That's how much fun I am today.
Fun. You're just mad that you didn't get enough time with Sekiro. Or you got too much time. I don't know how it boils out.
No, you're right. It's not enough. That's what I didn't mention, and part of my frustration is I've only played like 2 sessions for less, 45 minutes apiece, and that's not how you should play this game, especially at first. You need to like dive in head first, and figure it out. But anyway.
So Wall Street Journal states that according to their sources, and after this Wall Street Journal came out and said this, there was a couple other places, Eurogamer and GameSpot, I believe, that corroborated this, that 2 new Switch models are incoming this year. We've had these discussions if we're going to see a new SKU for it. And apparently, with Nintendo, the goal is to maintain sales momentum. They're actually seeing sales for the Switch slow down, and they want to continue the momentum forward. And from these, that according to Wall Street Journal states that one will be a pro version with the focus on performance for the hardcore gamer, and the other will be a cheaper, in their words, 3DS successor. The rumors suggest they'll be unveiled at E3 2019. Attached to this, people are assuming that it wouldn't be surprising if this launches before the new Pokemon game. Have new hardware out there for people to buy another Switch and then buy both versions of the game. Until there's more concrete details, I don't know if you guys have anything to say about this. The Pro version makes sense. The 3DS successor makes sense because Nintendo's always had a really cheap SKU to get into a household. We saw that with the 2DS, right? Where they completely... or not 2DS, Was it the 2DS? Which one was the one that was all one piece? Was that the 2DS that wasn't foldable? Yep. Yeah, it was the 2DS.
It was the 2DS, but then they later came out with a 2DS XL that was foldable.
Yeah.
But you're right. Initially, it was just that wedge thing.
Anything to say here, guys?
I forgot about the 2DS XL, Dom. That's a good point.
Yeah, there's some pretty cool, special editions of all the 3DSs, frankly, at this point, but especially...
The 2DS XL is actually kind of dank if you think about it, because it's like no one really wants the 3D, but you kind of do want the clamshell.
Yeah.
Right. I could never get the 3D to work for me, but anyway,
headaches.
For the Switch.
Or you could just have a 3DS XL and not use a 3D like we all do.
Right, yeah, exactly. But, Jared, to answer your question, though, I think I called this in our 2019 predictions. At least I called the cheaper model. I can't remember exactly what I said.
I'll check while you're going. Let's see.
Yeah. But obviously, I still say this is rumor state, right? Still a possibility that this isn't real. Although a bunch of different places are reporting on it, like you said. But it just makes a lot of sense for all the reasons you talked about. Like, if the Switch is starting to slow down sales-wise, granted, that should change once they drop this new Pokemon game. That should be a huge oh shit, okay, now we're buying Switches for a lot of people who are just waiting for Pokemon, right?
Yeah. To your point, real quick, your prediction was lighter system with a new battery is what you predicted.
Yeah, so I thought only one new version that doesn't sound exactly like what this is, but anyway. I'm at least partially right according to this.
Yes. You predicted a new one, so.
Yeah. I'm not upset whenever I get a console and then they announce we're revising it. It's like, I've had my Switch for 2 years now, and it's like I've had plenty of great times on it. It's paid for itself many times over, so I'm not worried about that. But if I'm on the other end of it, where I'm not in that console ecosystem yet, and I'm looking to get into it, I think it's always cool when you get a revised system, and it's like, well, actually, if I were one of those people, I could be looking at the Switch right now and be like, yeah, I mean, there's a couple things I would change on it,
Yeah.
So maybe this will be kind of the Switch, like what we wanted the Switch to be at launch, Who knows? Maybe the upgrades won't be that enticing or that interesting or anything to write home about, but yeah, I'm literally looking at it across the room and I'm like, yeah, you could have smaller bezels on those fat fucking bezels on that screen, and a bigger screen, better battery, yada yada yada.
I think the point with the two revisions is to do two things at the same time. One, to get us people who currently own a Switch to buy a new one, right? That's the Pro version, or what we assume the point of it is. Or, to your point as well, people who haven't had it yet, it gives them an incentive that, oh, this is the highest quality version. While at the same time, people who haven't invested in Switch yet, you give them a lower price point entry with the 3DS successor, but also people who currently own a Switch in a household, that family looks at a cheaper one and be like, oh, we can get the second kid this one too. This is all about getting people a second Switch in their household, buying an upgrade, or getting into the ecosystem for the first time. So it's going to be interesting to see how all this plays out. I wonder if they're going to go forward with 3 SKUs. I don't know if that's possible. They might just go and remove the one we currently have, right? And they'll have the cheaper SKU and the Pro SKU. I don't know if they'd have all 3 at the same time. And who's to say that...
That's the part that I'm wondering as well, because 3 seems like a lot, but I don't know.
Yeah, it depends on how they see the current Switch, because it could get replaced by either of these or both of these. Do they see the Pro overtaking the baseline, right? Or do they see, in comparison to the Pro, the one we have now being the weaker version, so what's the point of having that and just have the 3DS successor? I think they keep two. I think they keep these new two. And
I was always under the impression, I think we all were up until this point, that we were just going to get like a Switch Slim almost.
Yeah.
Just a cheaper revision. But now that I'm thinking about a possible Pro or XL model, I'm like, oh God, man, my imagination's going wild.
It's exciting.
I'm wanting that shit. Yeah, like, if they really fucking nailed it, dude, I don't know. Maybe I would be down, and then, like, find something to do with my Switch so I don't feel like I'm just, like, taking a loss or whatever.
Dude,
the resale value on these things is just through the roof, so...
It makes so much sense that, the original Switch launched with the black Joy-Cons, but then the blue and red? Sword and Shield are blue and red, so it could come with the Sword blue and the Shield red, those specific tinges of that color, and it still is like the original one where it's blue and red as the Joy-Con colors.
Makes sense.
And the bundle makes sense.
Look at you, Jared. Look at you.
So, some news about Dreams. They announced that the early access launches April 16th. So it's releasing finally. The surprising thing is they're charging $30. Now, the conversation here isn't, is Dreams worth $30? Because I think it very well is, especially if you're somebody who's into creating. The issue I have is with the game that's already struggling to find... Like, I know people love this game, and I know people are going to create awesome stuff with it, but this is a game about creation tools that's releasing at the end of a console's life cycle. And these games are, as cool as they are, they very rarely find success sales-wise. The funny thing is this, Dreams would be a great Xbox Game Pass game. And if PlayStation had a version of that, obviously they have PS Now, but that's not the same because, like, their first-party games don't launch free on it, right? If PlayStation had a Game Pass type thing, Dreams would be great because if you have it, it launches on the release date. You don't have to worry about any financial incentive to buy it except for subscribing, right? $30 seems interesting. I don't know. For the people who are going to try early access, it seems like the diehard Dreams fans. And to have them pay $30 for it, I think a game like this, you kind of want people to dive in and start exploring and see what it is. So I don't know if the $30 is a misstep or not. Once again, not saying that it's not worth $30. That's not what I'm arguing,
I think we know this much, at least. When Dreams was originally revealed at the PS4 reveal, I don't think Sony had it in mind for it to be like their first foray into the fucking early access.
Yeah, exactly. It also shows the lack of confidence in it because this wasn't shown during State of Play, which we'll talk about later. And this announcement happened days afterwards, right? So it's interesting. Maybe I'm making assumptions that they weren't confident in it, but maybe the date wasn't locked in. But the fact that it wasn't part of State of Play, but the announcement happened days after, there's something there.
Jared, clearly Sony is not confident in Dreams. Clearly not confident.
Yeah, it sucks too because what's the name of the studio? The Little Big Planet guys? Media Molecule.
Media Molecule.
Is this the end of Media Molecule? I hope not. With Tearaway not doing well, this possibly not doing well, who knows? It's scary.
I mean, there's a bigger conversation there, like that really is a whole other conversation. The Media Molecule conversation is a whole other thing.
We'll have that conversation, I think, when Dreams actually releases or we find out news. Because, there is a whole situation there with Sony letting them experiment to a detriment, almost.
Actually, it's not even a whole fucking conversation. It's just that these guys should not be a AAA studio.
Yeah, I agree.
The games that they're making, the experiments, that's great. It's cute, lovely, want it, want to buy it, want to try it. Don't make it $60 AAA. That's dumb.
For it to be sustainable, too, you need to give them
a
smaller budget to make it financially sustainable. This is just an interesting rumor. Not too much to say about it. When we hear more information, we'll see how it goes. But a new rumor via Spawnwave Media, and it was also backed by Liam Robertson. I describe them as 65-35 sources. 65% of the time they're correct, 35% of the time they're off. So take this all with a huge grain of salt. But they
35% grain of salt.
Exactly, a 35% grain of salt. But these guys did predict a lot of the Nintendo Switch stuff correct, as well as a lot of the Direct stuff and some other video game announcements. So they have been right and have had good information. But with a lot of these leakers, they also have a lot of bad information. So not everything they say is true. Anyways, the newest rumor is that From Software is currently working on a game that's published by Bandai Namco. That makes sense. Most of their games are. Details include an open world. Makes sense. Kingdoms you can approach in any order. That obviously sounds a little off-putting for a From game, but once you see the fast travel system in Sekiro and the way it plays out, it makes sense that this would be possible. And you get abilities from killing the leaders of these kingdoms, so the kings or whatever they are. And apparently it's described as like an evolution of Mega Man. So if you're familiar with Mega Man, you go into a boss's stage, you defeat that boss, and you get their power, right? So it's an evolution on that, meaning that you can attack whatever kingdoms you want, and when you finish that kingdom, you get a power that sustains with you. And the way I see it is not necessarily like a small level. It's like a chunk of a Souls game, right? So it's like a huge area. And at the end of the area, the main boss is the leader, and then that's what I would assume. A lot of this...
So, Jared, you know how in the Peanuts video specials, let's say a Charlie Brown Christmas, for example, when the parents are talking and it's just
womp, 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 womp.
it's just the brass instruments fucking around. Unfortunately, that's what I'm hearing right now, because I still have not heard the words Bloodborne 2.
Yeah.
And it's devastating for me. I know you disagree, but holy fucking shit. Who do I gotta blow around here to get a Bloodborne 2? You know what I'm saying?
The positive thing I will say is that From is often
Wow.
working on multiple games at once, and now that Sekiro's out of the door, hopes are that if this rumor is true, they're also working on Bloodborne 2. Who knows?
Sure, but at this point, I'd just like to say that there have now been multiple, like, mainline, whatever you want to call them, From Software games, not just your Deracines. There have been multiple mainline From Software games without a mention of Bloodborne 2, other than them fucking referencing it in Deracine and then pulling out last second. Oops, sorry, we didn't mean to do that. So I don't like this Bloodborne 2 tease, and I don't mean the good kind where it's a little trailer. I mean the kind where it feels like I'm getting jerked around, and not the good kind of jerking around.
And to your point, I think the earliest we would hear about that is Game Awards or PSX or whatever, you know.
Yeah, well, we thought Game Awards last year, and then, well, wait, was it Game Awards
a year
2
before?
years ago when
it
we
was
saw
2.
Sekiro?
Yeah.
Jeez, man. Jeez.
To this rumor, the last part, the one that I think is the biggest head scratcher, says George R.R. Martin is the lead writer. That's the biggest, I think, is incorrect. If anything, I think the lost in translation, if they got this information from a source, I think the lost in translation is that it's like Game of Thrones licensed, you know? And so obviously George R.R. Martin wrote those, so that might have been lost in the rumor spreading or leak or whatever. A lot of the other stuff seems like something From could tackle. It's just that thing is like the weirdest part of it. Who knows?
Still no news on Bloodborne 2.
Lastly, this is more of a confirmation as more of a confirmation than it is news, and that's Monolith Soft is hiring for a new Legend of Zelda game. It was revealed via like a Legend of Zelda themed recruiting page that they have. If you're not familiar with them, they co-developed Breath of the Wild with Nintendo. They did a lot of the topography on the map. They're responsible for the Xeno games. Their expertise is open world. So from this, we know that they're probably working on the next 3D Legend of Zelda game. The question with this is, how far along is it? Like, how much of a play does Monolith Soft have in the development? Are they still doing the topography type stuff, which comes in towards the later half of development? Or are they full in and they're barely starting, or they're near the beginning that they started a couple of months ago? Who knows? We've assumed that they're doing a sequel follow-up in the engine, a la Ocarina and Majora's Mask. But Legend of Zelda news. Any news is good news, right, Dom?
Yeah, I mean, something's going on.
Yeah. Hopefully we find out sooner than later. I don't think we hear about this, the next 3D Zelda game this year, with Awakening and even Cadence of Hyrule, which obviously isn't a full-on Legend of Zelda, but I think they have enough time to wait on it. Let's get into these February NPD highlights. We can scroll through these. We don't have to spend too much time on them, but there is some interesting stuff. So, Sega joined the digital leader panel this month, so that means their digital numbers will now be tracked. Obviously, we know not everyone's digital sales are tracked, but Sega's will now be, which is great. Crackdown 3 failed to reach the top 20, not only in the games for February, but on Xbox One, period. Which showcases, and we talked about this last week, just because their games releasing Game Pass doesn't mean they'll be successful. Obviously, their sales don't count towards NPD, but we assume that Game Pass was a large factor in that. Because those games, though they didn't review excellent, they still reviewed well. Crackdown didn't, and we saw the consequences of that. So
we're really getting to the point where you can't release a shitty game, man. You can't do it. You can't release Anthem. You can't release Crackdown. You can't release some half-ass thing that you just shit out sometime because, we worked on it for 6 years and we're I guess the cloud technology for the online multiplayer. We just spent too much time. Like, at the end of the day, somebody's got to be responsible for this. And, we talk a lot about crunch in the industry and things like that. It's never easy to properly plan out an enormous media production, but I'm really hoping as we move forward with the gaming industry and it kind of matures as a whole that we'll get to the point where on the production side of things it's kind of tightened up within the AAA realm, I guess you could say. Because, shit like this, it's like, this is showing things are going in a good direction for me, that these games are not as prominent as they would hope to be, because people just aren't going to take it. We're not going to take it anymore.
And the thing is, I'm not giving Microsoft a pass by any means. When I say this, I think they knew the game was bad and they just wanted to get it out. With all of the delays, I think they're just like,
at some point,
get this goddamn game out. Who cares? Just we'll bite the bullet.
That's the thing I wonder, like, how much worse was it last November when it was supposed to release? How much worse was it a year ago?
Yeah.
Because it just, like, how much worse could it have possibly been? It's weird.
And we don't know how many times they actually started from scratch. Like, they just scrapped everything. Who knows?
Jeez.
I mean, it worked, right? Like, it's not like a broken game. It's just not a great game. Right?
In the current landscape, you can't be a 5 and succeed financially. You just can't.
Right.
Yeah. Not that.
But as far as, like, how much worse could it have been, like, entirely broken, right? Like, it could have been not functioning.
And the thing is, it's also added value to Game Pass. Now, it's not a whole lot of value, but it is another game in that program for people, So
Terry Crews is in that thing, so there's something at least.
It's worth $10, I think. Game Pass, it's worth $10 to try it out. Anyways, next up, a series I've been championing for a long time, Metro, came out. Metro Exodus came in at number 8, which is great, I think, for the series. It beat the franchise launch sales by 50% without PC sales included. Obviously, they don't track their PC sales. So for it to come in at number 8 without PC sales, Metro is a PC franchise for the most part. Obviously, it's been successful on console, but its roots are in PC, just like Witcher. It's good. I'm glad that it sold well. I can't wait to get to it. It'll probably be my April or my April game, because I don't think anything big comes out. Katana Zero I'm excited for, but nothing else really for me. Other big news, we're talking about Nintendo Switch. This is kind of contradictory to Nintendo saying that they feel the sales are slowing down, which still can be true, but they were the best-selling hardware in February 2019, both in unit sales and dollar sales, and they also are the best-selling hardware for the year. I don't think any of us are surprised. It's the newest hardware on the market. It's going to be selling the best. Good for Switch. Let's get into these top 5s for both February and the year. For February, coming in at number 5, Red Dead Redemption 2, Far Cry New Dawn, Kingdom Hearts 3, Jump Force at number 2, which actually discounts the point of Crackdown 3 because Jump Force reviewed very badly, and all those anime weeaboos still bought it. And speaking of something that didn't perform very well at launch, and a bunch of people bought it. And
just to say on Jump Force, license, right? Star Wars Battlefront, you got the license, people are going to buy it.
Yeah. Number 1, Anthem. Like I was saying to my point, it doesn't matter. This is a proof that a game cannot be great at launch and still sell very well. Not only did it top the charts in February, it's the second best launch for BioWare since Mass Effect. The only other launch that was better was Mass Effect 3. So, sold very well. And for the top 5 games year to date, so this is only in 2019, not counting the last 12 months. Number 5, Red Dead Redemption 2. Number 4, Jump Force. So Jump Force came in and immediately took the 4th spot. Red Dead Redemption 2. Resident Evil 2 holding strong at number 3. Number 2, Anthem. Anthem released brand new and now is already still at number 2. It's probably going to be in the top 5 the rest of the year. And number 1, holding strong, Jordan, I don't know for how long, but it is Kingdom Hearts 3.
Kingdom Hearts. This is the song that they play in Kingdom Hearts.
I think by the end of the year, it'll still be in the top 10. I'm interested to see where it finally lands. Yeah, but it being number 1 2 months in is really cool. Either way. We're going to get into a couple of announcements that happened. I don't have too much to say about this first one. But I know Jordan loves Borderlands, so we'll get to hear what he has to say. But there was a Gearbox There was the Gearbox PAX East panel. It happened today, as the day of recording, at the 20th of March. Some of the announcements. So the first half of the presentation was Gearbox Publishing. Nothing really interesting. Bulletstorm's coming to Switch. No one really cares. Then there was a 15-minute magic trick by Randy Pitchford. Not
the guy
great.
who's currently trying to convince everyone that he's not a pedophile.
Which completely overstated the announcement of a Tiny Tina board game that came out that no one's talking about because he just did a magic trick in between it.
Let's do more kiddie stuff, Randy. That's a great idea.
Then it was followed by a stuttering trailer that froze twice for Ultra HD skin pack for the Handsome Collection, releasing April 3rd, and Borderlands Remastered, releasing April 3rd, which comes with all the DLC. This presentation, I don't want to stick on it too long, arguably one of the worst presentations I've ever seen. There was freezes in the trailers. You could see the PC they were working on. There was frame rate issues, and I'm not the frame rate guy, but it was running at 3 frames a second for Borderlands 3. But then at the end, there was a big reveal trailer, right, for Borderlands 3 to get everybody hyped. The notes I had, as somebody who's not a huge Borderlands guy, was it showcased multiple environments. They touted over 1 billion guns. And the biggest thing is there was not even an indication of any release window at the end of the trailer. So my assumption is it's definitely not coming out this year. Jordan, as somebody who likes Borderlands, what did the trailer do for you?
I think it would have been great if it had come out about 4 years ago. Yeah, I mean, this is not a surprise. I've kind of almost beaten this horse to death, so I guess I'll go ahead and do that now and just say that, instead of Battleborn, you should have followed up with Borderlands 3. Once again, a franchise at the height of its popularity and something that just needed to be done. If you got people that don't want to keep working on Borderlands, then they can leave the fucking studio. Because Battleborn was just a dumb, half-assed,
a huge misstep.
In some ways, poor misstep, and in some ways, it's a poor man's Borderlands, and it's just.
It was a cash grab into the Overwatch zeitgeist. It wanted to go for the mobile online battle arena.
Right.
Yeah.
So, we've talked also before about how Randy Pitchford's clearly made a plethora of garbage ass decisions. Business-wise,
it was ballsy. Sorry to interrupt you. It was ballsy that he hosted this.
Alien Colonial Marines. So, go ahead.
It was ballsy that he hosted this. That they had him host it with everything going on. I was actually really surprised that they had him host it.
Well, I mean, I kind of made the offhanded joke or whatever, but yeah, like this guy's literally been
currently under investigation,
having child pornography. Yeah, and he's like, let's do a magic trick and have a Tiny Tina board game. Little guys, like, let's not do that right now, buddy. He does that shit all the fucking time. Also, I always thought the dude was weird because he has the fucking wackiest shirts I've ever seen. Like the most colorful, wacky, weird, creepy shirts. That's a side note. Just wanted to put it out there. Anyways. He's not convincing me, I guess is the way to put it. But besides the point, all the business with Gearbox, the point is, yeah, Borderlands should have been here a long time ago, and the upgrades that we're looking at are not that significant. If I saw this at the beginning of the generation, I would think, yeah, the graphics look great. I would think, yeah, the expanded world looks great. The stuff they're doing with weapons and vehicles, awesome. But now at the end of this generation, when we should probably be playing like Borderlands 4, maybe another spin-off, well, it's just not really making the cut for me. It's just not really doing it for me. I'm going to enjoy Borderlands 3, no doubt, as long as it's not a broken mess, hopefully. And I will say I'm glad to see that they're still continuing the story, even though people act like it's non-existent and they don't give a shit about it. I think it's cool that we still have characters around from the first game, second game. Since you are a Vault Hunter and you are not the same Vault Hunter that you were in the last game, it's cool that they keep those characters around that you played as in the last game. I like that in Borderlands 2. But anyways, yeah, it was just underwhelming and exactly what I kind of predicted, just because they clearly don't understand how kind of poorly they're handling things and how poorly people are looking at them, what kind of a light they're looking at them. So Gearbox, yeah, who knows, man? I don't know, but I think we're going to get a good game. It's just like, it's sad that it was such a predictable situation on how they'd just be like, yep, here's a Borderlands 3 trailer that you wish you had multiple years ago.
My prediction is when this game releases and it reviews, I think it'll be in the Fallout 4 category in terms of, I think it'll review well, it'll be a game that people enjoy, but it will go down as more of the same and not enough evolution. Like, Fallout 4, I know, Dom, you loved it. I love Fallout 4, but I do understand the criticism that it's just more Fallout 3, which isn't bad necessarily, but it didn't progress the series in any meaningful way. That's what I think.
Let me step in.
Okay.
And let me say this, Jared, because not only did it not progress the series in any meaningful way, Fallout 4 regressed the series. I'm just going to put that out there. Because they actually took away a lot of things that made the previous games great. Anyway, I'll let you continue. Sorry.
Yeah.
I had to get that off.
Yeah, but we did enjoy it, though. Yeah, it wasn't...
Still a great game.
Yeah. I think that's where Borderlands 3 will ultimately end up. As somebody who's not interested in the series at all, this didn't do anything for me. I think it looked cool, but it didn't, get me excited to hop in, so... anything you want to add?
Also ridiculous that it took this long. Yes, there is something I want to add. Also ridiculous that it took us this long to get Borderlands OG on PS4. They should have just had the whole collection. They did, I guess it's the Handsome Jack collection with pre-sequel and 2 on PS4 and Xbox One.
Yeah.
But yeah, it took this long. It's dumb.
I thought it already was. So this threw me off. I'm like, Game of the Year edition, Borderlands 1. Like, you can't already... We don't have that already? I thought we had that.
Shit. It's weird. Anyways, yeah, the whole thing is... It's the worst presentation I've ever seen. And I'm kind of being kind. It was just...
It's weird how... Gearbox is doing this thing. You guys will appreciate this, sports boys. Imagine a football being fumbled by Gearbox, right? And then it's one of those things where instead of a kind of a regular fumble where... Within about 5 seconds, it gets picked up, right? There's like a scramble towards the ball, and people pile up, and you got the whoever has the ball, right? The play's over. But this is like where they fumble the ball, and then it bounces up and hits the guy's knee.
They kick it with their foot.
Again, and they accidentally kick it down the field, and so people that didn't even think they were part of the fumble are like trying to get it. And then, yeah, it keeps getting kicked or bouncing off of pads and helmets and random shit. And it's just like, oh, my God, I didn't think this could last this long. I didn't think we could keep on fumbling.
A+.
Yeah, just can't get out of their own way. So the last thing, I don't know if we're going to have a lot to say about PlayStation State of Play as a whole, but because there wasn't a lot of really interesting announcements, if I'm being completely honest. But I want to have a discussion in terms of state of play as it is and moving forward and all that. But let's just get through these announcements real quick. So it opened with Iron Man VR 2019. What I will say is that the opening for this was really cool. Got me excited. I'm like, oh, Iron Man, what is this?
But the gameplay.
Exactly. The moment you see the VR gameplay, because you think, oh, this is Iron Man VR. How interesting is it going to be? And it's on rails, the most generic VR gameplay you've ever seen in your damn life. And who knows if this is the complete game, but the trailer was just, it was bad. The CG, not gameplay stuff, what they made very clear with very large font, was cool. The actual gameplay that you're going to be experimenting with and experiencing, not great. They then showed Ready Set Heroes, which is a co-op competitive dungeon crawler. Looks interesting, cute little indie game. There was a VR title montage for PSVR, a bunch of stuff we've seen before, Falcon Age. There wasn't anything really new, if my memory serves me correct. There was
Falcon Age sounds like a great Dragon Age spinoff.
There was a trailer for that Blood and Truth kind of like crime-based VR game that we've seen for a couple of years. A new trailer for Concrete Genie looks really cool. It's a game I'm probably going to be interested in when it comes on sale. It looks like a very fun, creative time, but how long is the game? Is it interesting? Who knows?
I can't get myself excited for that game if I try.
I like the art style a lot.
I don't even know if I'd play it on PS Plus.
Yeah. I love the art style, just the gameplay and everything. I don't know. It seems like a false promise because you're like, oh, I'm going to draw these specific, like my own creations. It's actually, they're like these templates. Yeah. The coolest and new thing we saw was Observation, which is like this. It's like Five Nights at Freddy's, like in that game you control cameras, but instead you're controlling a space station, and it's like horror sci-fi. Very interesting. There's like
Okay. Now I'm listening. Is this PSVR?
Yeah, I think it's both. If memory serves, I think it can be played both.
That'd be great because the concept of Five Nights at Freddy's, like trying to like kind of watch different corners of security in this place and all that. It's interesting enough. I think it's kind of weirdly implemented and it's just freaky, creepy, but yeah, I could see like a game where you're like checking security cameras and
you control the station, like you are the station. Horror. Like you can close doors and open doors. Cool. And
that's cool.
The trailer was basically showing the psychological breakdown of this female astronaut. It looked really interesting. Okay. We got a Days Gone trailer. Once again, I think if you're into Days Gone at this point, you're into it. If you're not, I don't know if this trailer sold you. I think it just boasted your thoughts if you're excited for it, I may be wrong, but I'm somebody that's not into Days Gone. It didn't do anything for me. Dom, I know you're already into Days Gone. Do you think this would have, excited people who weren't interested?
It depends, because, there was a lot of coverage that came out a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like a lot of just some gameplay demos, and people had like, I don't even know if there was actually gameplay demos that came out, but a lot of people had like previews, like industry people had previews and then talked about it. So like if you were listening to all that, then this wasn't necessarily anything new. But I think if you missed a lot of that, if you haven't been totally tuned into this and you haven't seen anything from this game in a few months, then this trailer could have turned a corner for you, because it looked fucking sweet, frankly. But yeah, if you've already been following it, it's not anything really new. So
yeah, and I think that this state of play was also, I think, a showpiece to sell people on Days Gone that weren't sold already, which is a good thing for Sony. And lastly, they closed out with, which I think is the best trailer of the year so far, the Mortal Kombat 11 trailer, which was New School versus Old School. It unveiled Jax, who people didn't know was in the game yet, and it showed Liu Kang and Kung Lao. Really cool. The whole point of MK11 is it's about time travel, and this trailer showcased that. It showed younger versions facing the older versions and their personality differences. Great music choice. Really solid trailer. It was weird, and I'm not saying this is specifically a Sony problem, because this happens with Directs and obviously Microsoft stuff, but this did feel like a pay for slot kind of thing. It's like, we got this final slot in the state of play, and NetherRealm's like, we'll pay for that slot and get that because the game's coming out next month. Obviously, it's not a bad thing, like I'm not bashing it for it, but it just felt like that. It was kind of weird, because normally for these type of things you close on an exclusive announcement, right? Like Nintendo always closes on. We saw the Link's Awakening remake. Microsoft always closes on. Did they close on Cyberpunk? So I guess that's an exception. I guess I'm wrong there. Last year at E3?
It's still pretty big, though. Not exclusive, but that's a big closer.
Yeah, I guess.
Point, I guess.
I'll just say that, PlayStation, they've got to get people excited, man. Obviously, we are excited about Death Stranding, Last of Us Part 2.
Ghost of Tsushima.
Ghost of Tsushima, thank you. But you still gotta do other things to make us excited. Like, this is... They're supposed to be courting us as gamers, right? And it feels like they've just stopped. They're like, well, we're getting married with Last of Us Part 2 or whatever, so it's like, why do you even care? Why do we have to be romantic about it? It's like, well, you fucking need to. I need that,
So the thing is, I'll say this was, I think the format was great. Dom, did you watch the actual State of Play?
Yeah, not until we had started talking about it. All I had was watch the Twitter updates about it, but then later on I actually went through and watched it because I was curious enough. So people hated this damn thing, and I was like, wow.
So I think the format and the pacing was exceptional. I think it was great. I think the problem was content, and it's not that the content featured was bad. It's all context, right? So we're nothing happens in a bubble. Before the State of Play happens, we know PlayStation isn't being at E3. They're not going to be at E3. We hear they're going to do these. We're assuming there's rumor they're going to do these Nintendo Direct style things. There's maybe not going to be a PSX this year. What's happening? Okay, they announced State of Play. Cool. This is going to be their chance to show us why they're not coming to E3. Okay, they said PSVR and PS4 titles. Okay, so my assumption is it's going to be PSVR stuff, but they got to give us a date for Death Stranding, Last of Us, or Ghost of Tsushima. One of them. Worst case scenario, we'll get a date for Dreams. So they had to close on something at the end of the show. And then we see it. It's well-paced. Format's great. Ends on a great Mortal Kombat 11 trailer. And people are sitting there waiting for the one more thing because this is PlayStation's first State of Play. What's the PlayStation ender? What makes this a PlayStation product? And I do think that was what irritated people. Man, even if the Dreams thing would have ended the State of Play, I think some people would have been disappointed because the internet's angry. I get that, but I do think there wouldn't have been as much vitriol if it was as small as the Dreams beta early access thing. I just think that people's expectations, and yes, there were plenty of people who were expecting an E3 level conference. That's dumb. But I think the more rational people, I do think they have a point in being a little bit upset because this was supposed to be the explanation as to why they're missing E3. And I want to discuss with you guys because there's two frames of thought here. In one camp, people think that they set exceptions extremely well, that going forward you could possibly get a big reveal, but you don't expect that all the time. And other people are in the camp that they messed up the first impressions because you need to have people understand why they should even watch these things. They think that viewership's going to drop off in the next one because this is their expectation now. Those are the two camps.
Why in the fuck would I, specifically me, watch the next one if I wasn't even interested enough to watch the first one and it did not, set the world on fire?
Yeah.
And then why, if I'm you that did watch it and wasn't necessarily all that impressed, why am I going to watch the next one? And it's like Dom that kind of got interested halfway through. Like, are you dying to watch the next one?
And I think the way they get around that is they clarify, they need to be they were specific in this. I'm not saying they weren't, but they need to. The thing is, in the next one, do they specify that there's going to be an exclusive announcement or Last of Us footage, or they specify it, but then that ruins the surprise in it, It's like they're...
No, I don't think they should do that. They should have just set the tone properly with the first one. Maybe they do set the tone because they don't want you to think that it's going to be anything all that special, but who knows?
And
this is tough to deal with, man.
We also don't know how often these things are going to happen. People think they're going to be like directs where we get maybe 4 of them a year with the Nindy sprinkled in. Yeah. But we could get 2 of these this year. We have no idea because this is the first one, This it's tough because Dom and I were talking about this. I wasn't disappointed because I had my expectations set, but I do understand why people were upset because it felt like a kind of hollow ending. I told you, I love that Mortal Kombat 11 trailer. I think it's the best trailer of the year. But when you're watching these things, you're like, okay, what's the one more thing? What's the PlayStation ender? It's weird to end a PlayStation State of Play with a Mortal Kombat 11 trailer. It's weird. Just doesn't feel right.
I guess, like, I don't know. I don't really understand that just because I don't know how it's weird because they've not done it before. But I don't know.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, they haven't done it before, so you shouldn't have the expectations that that's how it's going to be. Yeah. Like I told you, the whole context of like them not being at E3, the normal person, like we understand, like it's like whatever. The normal person is like, oh, this is the replacement for E3. I'm excited, and then they tune in and they're like,
but why would you say that? I guess to me, I'm like, I wouldn't, because you mentioned like, yeah, this is supposed to be their answer to why they're not at E3, but I'm like, what? I don't know. Nothing really led me to think that was what this was, and even if it was part of that answer, even then, I'm like, I don't really see that because they could have 2 or 3 more of these before E3 or another one during E3. But even if they don't, I mean, I'm not expecting necessarily an answer to why they're not at E3, I guess, unless they literally were to say something like that. I don't know. I didn't really have much of expectations at all.
Yeah.
I didn't even watch it live, but
I understand your perspective specifically, Dom. Like, I totally get it. But we have to talk about the average person who's a PlayStation fan that hears, oh, they're not doing a PSX this year. Oh, they're not going to be at E3. Being a PlayStation fan, and the first thing he hears, oh, they're doing this PlayStation State of Play. You get on the internet and you start reading, like, oh, it's going to be their Nintendo Direct type of thing. Oh, the last Direct, I'm not familiar with Nintendo that much. Let me go and see what it is. Oh, they do Link's Awakening. And you know, people are comparing this to Directs, and they're like, well, Directs don't always have a big announcement. True, but they do always end with something specifically Nintendo related. And it's not even the ending. They always have like a whoa moment in them.
Yeah, so you're right, and because that's how most people did react, right? Like the internet
we saw the dislikes.
Yeah. Right, you're definitely right, and that's how people did react, and that's your analysis is right, because that's what people were expecting. But I'm just like, I don't understand that, and I'm calling those people out, kind of being like, you're a bit entitled here, I think, because like they didn't say anything, like they don't owe you anything. One, I mean, I guess you can contextually build some expectations yourself, but that's to me like your own problem. And if you don't, fulfill those, but at worst, I could only see like Jordan's take was like, well, this wasn't that interesting. I probably won't tune in live for the next one. That's about as mad or as upset I could see someone reasonably getting about it. Like, oh, well, this was not that great. Well, maybe I won't watch the next one.
Yeah.
Move on with your day, I guess. You know what I mean? That's about as critical as I could imagine a reasonable person being of this. Because it's like they announced some games and showed some stuff that didn't exist or wasn't shown the day before. And they didn't have to do that, I guess. I don't know. The kind of like the harshness of people against it was weird to me. I don't know. It's like, it's just one of those things. The internet is loud sometimes, I guess, and so I'm like, eh.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, I try to take the opinions of the people in the middle, because there's people that are way too forgiving, I think, sometimes, and there's people who are way too harsh, right? Because like there's some people like Jeff Kanata or even Greg Miller were like, this is fantastic, this is so great, and I'm like, you can like it, but I don't know if it's fantastic, you know what I mean?
I guess if you're like a huge PSVR guy, then I see why you'd say that. But to me, I was kind of like, I don't know.
But even then,
No Man's Sky looked pretty cool, but I'm like,
you're talking about people are like, oh, but PSVR sold over 4 million units. Over 85 million people own a PS4. That's a small segment. Great sales, but it's a small segment.
That's not the state of play. The state of play is not that everyone's playing PSVR, so it shouldn't be the majority or at least a huge chunk,
I think the fact that it was VR and no major PlayStation stuff was like a double whammy. And, they stated it was going to be PSVR games, but I do think because they also added PS4 games, people are assuming, like, we don't know if Death Stranding, Last of Us, or Ghost of Tsushima are coming out this year. Do we get another one of these in time for them to say the game's coming out in the fall? Who knows? Like I said, we don't know when the next one is. And to your point, Dom, like, I'm not mad either, but I love the pacing. I love the format. It just didn't have I'm indifferent on it. You know, it didn't have like the that was great moment. It was just like it was fine. You know, so and for PlayStation not being at E3 for me personally, I'm like, if they're going to be doing state of plays, I'm not even a PlayStation fan, but I would like them to be more than fine. Maybe just even the first one would be more than fine. That's what's frustrating. But I'm not like, bleh. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, and some of them probably will be like more than fine. You know, one of these times they probably will drop a release date for Death Stranding, or they'll announce a remake of like Metal Gear Solid 1 ground up or something. You know what I mean? And there will be some of those.
That will not go over well.
But I don't know.
Metal Gear Solid 1.
Whatever the...
Yeah,
you know what I mean, though. Kind of a maybe a bad example, but...
Yeah, it's tough. I think when we hear the next one is happening, we'll say a lot about like the pacing for the year and what they plan to do. The thing, too, I think this is proof that they are in the state that we've thought about, where like they're in the in-between. Like, these games aren't coming out soon. They don't have a whole lot to show. And maybe this is a byproduct of like... They couldn't have shown anything crazy because they don't have anything crazy ready. You know what I mean? That could also be a point of it. Maybe they didn't show anything because they obviously don't feel pressured to, but like they couldn't because nothing's ready yet. So and they're in the state of like, do we wait to do a state of play later when we can give a date for something that people would be super excited for, or do we start our state of play to give people frame of reference for the pacing and the format? You know. I will commend them on pacing and format. I think, and to some extent, they do the pacing better than Nintendo because there wasn't anybody coming out and like breaking it up very weirdly. It's just the content wasn't necessarily there, and some may argue that the content with a brand like Sony that has these amazing first-party studios, that's the easiest thing for them to nail, and that's the frustrating thing. Is because like you'd expect them to maybe mess up the pacing, you'd expect them to maybe mess up the format, but they nailed those, and the content where it was like is where it was lacking. So,
yeah. I think it's what you're saying. Where like they're just kind of content light these days.
Yeah.
I mean, what are they going to ask Kojima to make another Death Stranding trailer? Like he's spent more time making trailers than making the game, and you know what I mean. Trailers and these demos or whatever take a long time too, right? I think you're probably right, and it's a lot of a factor of. And it's just not that much.
I think it's also...
They want to get something out. I don't know.
Part of the anger, I think, is people want one of those 3 big games to be coming out this year, and they're possibly getting to the realization that might not be the case. Obviously, it's not fact. We don't know. But, you know, as the months pass and these announcements don't feature that stuff, people are like, are we not getting one of those 3 games this year? And it leads to disappointment, which adds on to the anger. Yeah.
And in the meantime, they're trying to show you, like... Because we keep talking, we've all been doing it, right, for the past 2 years or whatever. Of like, those are the big 3 exclusives that Sony's working on. It was 4 before Spider-Man released now, right?
Yeah, and
so
5
instead of like,
more.
yeah. And so instead of what you're saying and them giving us more on one of those, a release date for one of those, they're trying to prove to us that Days Gone belongs in the conversation with those other 3, right?
Yeah.
By giving us another trip. So I think that's their perspective, and Days Gone just doesn't have the impact of a God of War or Spider-Man.
And the tough thing too with Sony not doing a whole lot of stuff in the indie realm with partnerships is like, we just got a Nintendo Direct that people loved because of a remake of an old game, and then an indie developer working on their own IP. So like PlayStation could possibly do that too, and that could be a good announcement. But they haven't really set the foundation to do that. You know what I mean? Like the weird thing too is, where was the Medieval remake? That like went silent for some reason, you know?
Oh yeah, you're right.
Where was that? That was weird. Anyways, we'll see. I think the next state of play will say a lot in terms of what PlayStation's plan is for their cadence of them and their content and everything. We'll see. Anyways, in terms of what we're going to be playing, for me, more Sekiro. Haven't had a chance to see Us. I'm probably going to see it this weekend. Excuse me, hopefully. Yeah, that's pretty much it for me. More Sekiro. I want to dive in. I hope to beat it this week. Hopefully. Who knows? Probably not. That's it for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna hopefully get more time into Sekiro. Because yeah, like I said before, I need to do it. I didn't get nearly enough in, but I forgot to mention I did go see Us last weekend. If you're into horror movies, like I think you should go see it. It's really, really good.
I had 4 other friends who saw it. Two of them loved it. One of them was like indifferent, and one of them hated it. It's a very polarizing movie. Very interesting.
Really?
The reviews are mixed too. It's very weird. Okay. Yeah. I trust your opinion, though. I'm still excited to see it, despite mixed opinions, but it's very interesting how polarizing it is.
It's different than... Because I really loved Get Out, Jordan Peele's other movie. It's very similar to that movie in one large sense, but then it's also very different in another large sense.
Yeah.
That's all.
Speaking of Jordan Peele, did you guys see the Twilight Zone trailer, the teaser?
Oh, I'm so excited.
Oh, man.
This chump over here is going to buy CBS All Access because it's the only goddamn way you can watch that shit.
If Marvel reboots Blade, I want him to direct Blade.
Just quick note, Jordan Peele has a movie that he did that's better than Get Out.
A movie?
It's about a cat. It's called Keanu. Have you seen that shit, dude? That's a good movie. It's probably not as good as Get Out, but it's fucking good.
Well, now I'm curious. I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, it's not Key and Peele like
sketch comedy
connected, but it's them. It's Key and Peele, the dudes.
Okay.
And they have this cat that they find, and they kind of like go on an adventure with this cat because they fall in love with this cute little kitten.
Jordan, you're gonna be playing Sekiro?
Sekiro! Indeed.
Hell yeah.
I will be wolfing it up if
with your shinobi.
Yeah. I think I am gonna get around the combat, like kind of wrap my head around it and be able to get a little bit better with this defense and parry system, and it is extremely essential to the game. So I think once I kind of lock my understanding of that in a little bit better, then hopefully I'm going to be really jamming along with this guy. So but yeah, hopefully get around to a little more FF7 Switch. So, and then, yeah.
Hell yeah. That's it for episode 139. Thank you guys for joining us. Hopefully we have a guest next week. I'm going to see. I was wanting to have a guest this week, but PAX East, everyone's, doing that whole thing.
Playing Borderlands 3 or something.
Thank you guys for listening. If you can, please follow us on iTunes, leave us a review. It helps us move up the charts and the algorithm so people can see the podcast. If you can, go over to YouTube, subscribe to us, leave a like, smash that like button, and hit the bell icon. It lets you know when we upload because, YouTube subscription model is kind of messed up and you don't always get your subscriptions in your feed. It doesn't happen all the time, but just to be safe, hit that bell icon. If you can, follow us on Twitter at CTRLINT. That's Controlled Interests abbreviated. I am at Jared_. Dom is at Dom's Oreos, and Jordan is at Mellow Modus. We'll catch you guys next time. Bye.